Of. Welcome back, family. My name's Paul. I'm a happy member of Cocaine Anonymous. This is our podcast on Step 12. I'm really thrilled to have been joined by a recent friend of mine, Graham. Do you want to say hello to our listeners?
Hi, everyone. My name's Graham. I'm a grateful, recovered alcoholic addict.
Well, I'm really pleased you've joined us today. If you're listening to this, if you've just clicked on this video and you've not listened to the other ones, we work the 12-step program in order. So this video and its content is meant as following on from steps 1 through 11. We also have a video on sponsorship. We also have a video on an introduction to Cocaine Anonymous, the steps, the program, fellowship. So please check those out. And remember, we work these steps with a sponsor. This is just a brief video meant to be an introduction into step 12. I'm not a spokesman for CA, I'm just a member that's sharing my experience around the steps of the program, the fellowship. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Graham to share with us for a couple of minutes his experience about recovery, CA, the program, and the fellowship. Over to you, Graham.
Hi, Graham, recovered alcoholic addict. I've been in recovery for roughly 4.5 years now. How I found, the fellowship was through someone else. And, I wanted what they had. I wanted freedom from active addiction and alcoholism. Because I found basically drinking drugs just ruins my life, and I couldn't stop or control the amount I consumed, and my life become unmanageable. And I couldn't deal with life on life's terms. I needed help. I needed to get clean and sober. I was miserable in the madness. I was in the madness, as we call it, for a good 20 years in total. And, through coming into CA, I've managed to find freedom from active addiction and alcoholism, the obsession to change how I feel using drink and drugs has been removed. And as long as I carry on working this program, I will stay well. And, that has been my experience. It's like I owe everything to the 12 steps. They really have saved my life. Before I found the 12-step fellowship way, I was really unmanageable. I couldn't manage life on life's terms. I couldn't manage my thoughts and emotions, my responsibilities. Drink and drugs always came first. And I always thought I was a bad person, because I would literally walk over anyone to get, what I needed. That was the type of person I became, unfortunately, and I didn't like the person I became.
Graham, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Oh, go ahead. Carry on.
Yeah. Just my mind's gone blank for a second.
That's okay. Do you want me to chime in?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I mean, well, it's a solution. But many of us come in for our drinking and we stay for our thinking. We get clarity and serenity in the company of others that are on this journey, in this process, reading this literature, working a simple program, in the solution, and persevering and enduring on this pathway. And for me, it's the power of the fellowship, Graham. It's the power of identification. It's a shared experience. It doesn't matter particularly the substance, doesn't matter the geography, doesn't matter how much or how little. What whether we're male or female, what colour we are, what our pay grade is. None of those things matter. We used to use, today we don't use. We meet together to share a common solution, to share about these 12 steps to freedom. And that is the basis of our gathering together. That's the main principle of anonymity. We come along and we meet on the basis of people that have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, and are more productive members of society. And that's the point of gathering, isn't it? The anonymity. So, for me, the steps are a way to get in touch with the Creator, with our higher power, as we understand Him, and get some practical wisdom, and locate solution for our thinking and our maladjustment to life. And even today, Graham, I've been in a meeting earlier, and it got me thinking about how, it's easy to become maladjusted to life, to become irritated and restless. And nowadays, because we listen to people that manage to face life square on, and cope successfully without medicating with loads of drink and drugs, it kind of creates faith in your heart. You believe it can work for you as well. Which I suppose the essence of step 2, faith and trust that this program, this process can work for us, and that we can get free and stay free. And I think that's the power of the community, the power of the fellowship. And the thing is about the steps, it's a personal journey. It's really, really a precious personal journey. I've got a chap at the moment. I've got a couple of chaps actually early on in the steps, and I've said to them, look, it's your step work. This is your personal journey. This is your change of perspectives. This is your psychic change, your personality change that will be sufficient to liberate you from the disease of addiction, from alcoholism. If we do what they did, we will get what they got, which is long-term sobriety, one day at a time. So come back in, Graham.
Yeah, it's like 12. Step 12 is, funny enough, my favourite step. I love giving back, because this is how I express my gratitude for this fellowship that has saved my life. It's like, I wouldn't be here today. That's a fact. That's a fact. My using and drinking was so bad. I would be dead by now if it wasn't for this fellowship. And, I'm just so grateful for, the opportunity to pass on, a message. It's like step 12 work is very important. It even says in the book, when all else fails, helping another, is the way forward. And, I try to carry this message, not, my version of it. I try to stick to the book, because anything outside of the book is just my opinion. And, my opinion don't count for anything. We don't need to include my opinion, because this book works. The textbook of the 12 steps, formulated by, another 12-step fellowship, AA, has given, freedom to millions, since the 1930s. And it's like, looking back on the history of 12-step recovery, it's like, I don't know too much about the history, but, I know little bits, as in, when the program first started up, it's like a lot of things have changed over time. And, in a way, you could say it's lost its original message in a way. It's like there used to be like newcomer meetings, where you would work your 12 steps, and you would do that before going to, normal AA meetings. And, you would like study the book, when you get into the actual AA meetings after doing the beginners meetings. And, Dr. Bob, our co-founder, he took, I can't remember, how many, but it was literally thousands of people through, I think it was something ridiculous, like 5,000 people through the 12 steps in a period of about 11 years. And, he worked with them fast, because, we need the solution fast before we die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. I believe in working these steps thoroughly and quickly with someone that's armed with the facts about addiction and recovery, and sponsorship works really, really good. I'm privileged to help quite a few blokes myself in that process. And I've seen folk go on to work with others. I've seen absolute miracles. I really have. I was talking to a good friend of mine yesterday, and he celebrates 2 years next week, and he was living in a bin shed with his skin growing into his clothes, Graham. I mean, the soles of his shoes had worn out from walking the streets, getting the next fiver to get that 10 or 20 quid. He was in a real mess. He'd burnt all his bridges. He was skeletal, and he's now got 2 years clean and sober. And that's just one person. I could name several similar cases to that over the years. This program process works. It absolutely does. So let's come to step 12, because I'm absolutely sure you and me could talk all day long in general terms, but the wording of the step, having had a spiritual awakening. I'll put it up on the screen, Graham, to make sure I'm quoting it exactly right. There it is. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics, to addicts, and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Now, God gave Bill Wilson great wisdom when he worded these steps. It is worded as a spiritual awakening, an awakening of the spirit, an internal refreshing quickening, an internal coming to life, and an awakening. When we wake up, we're groggy. We come to, we came along, we came to, and we came to believe and to understand. And having gone through all the inventory process of step 1, powerlessness and manageability consequences, resentments, fears and harms, in 4, exact nature wrongs, in 5, defects and assets of character, in 6, shortcomings, in 7, everyone we've harmed, in 8, we learn about ongoing spiritual inventory, nightly inventory, spot check inventory, mini inventory. We admit when we're wrong. We seek our higher power, our creator, our God, through prayer and meditation, seeking the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. We then, Graham, if we're attending meetings, reading literature, personal spiritual life, spiritual literature, the big book, working with others, step work, and working with a sponsor, we will have had a spiritual awakening. I'm going to make a bold statement, Graham. If we big little word, if we're doing all that, in my experience, we have a spiritual experience that is sufficient to liberate us from the desire to go on destroying our lives in drink and drugs. Now, go on, come in, Graham. I'm just what I'm going to do is just break down the language of the step, but come on in.
It's like, you know, I've definitely had a spiritual awakening. You know, I would say I've had loads of mini spiritual experiences over time. And, you know, my main spiritual experience was when I done my step 4 and 5. And the obsession to use and drink and change how I feel was definitely removed. You know, it was a sudden process for Bill Wilson. It was more of a, you know, spiritual experience for him. And, you know, I had a very similar thing. But I think, you know, for the majority, it's mainly a awakening to this personality change, you know, the way we look at life. You know, it's like I notice things that I've never noticed before. It's really, really weird. It's like everything's got colour now and nothing's, you know, grey. And it's like I've had the pleasure of doing a lot of H&I work, you know, hospitals and institutions. And, you know, that's where it all, you know, originated from. You know, first part of my recovery, like after I'd been through the steps, was, you know, I used to go into a hospital in Brighton and we go around the wards and we speak to patients, you know, that are really ill. And I would see some horrific sights, you know, quite scary sights. And then a matter of like months later, I've seen the very same people out in the community going to our meetings and looking like really well. You know, it's a cruel illness addiction, you know, whether it's drink, drugs, or anything else. You know, just losing that, you know, that control, you know, not being able to, you know, for example, it's like I was one of those where, you know, I always believed a lie. I'm just going to have one, and it would never be one. You know, it's like, and it's like the things I've seen, you know, in the hospital. It's like I've seen people, unfortunately lose their limbs due to their lifestyle of addiction. You know, I've seen people that are like a horrendous, like green color. You know, I've seen some horrific sights, and it's amazing, you know, what people can come back from, literally those gates of, you know, death. You know, if they just apply themselves to this simple solution, which, you know, we're famous for complicating it. And really, it is quite simple. It's a program of action. You know, don't analyze it. You know, just get on with it and do it. And you know, that has been my experience. I'm glad my ears were open enough to listen and, you know, understand enough that I just got to get on with this stuff. You know, it's like when, you know, when I'm like in meetings and I see the change in others, you know, people come in, you know, looking, you know, really, and they got these like dead eyes, And, and then a short while later, you see a spark of hope in their eyes. And, the transformation, it's amazing. It's such a gift to see. I've been blessed with, a lot of my sponsees are now sponsoring others. And, we just got to pass this message on, that I believe that is my job from my higher power. Just, pass the message on that there is a way to stop and stay stopped.
There sure is. Absolutely so. Absolutely so. Yeah, that's really good stuff, Graham. So, to come back to, the step, and when I look at this step with blokes, I look at the wordings of each step, and it said having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. So it's not something that's just happened. I didn't wake up one day and I was suddenly in the lotus position on a pink cloud and everything was great. The spiritual awakening I've had is as a result of having worked these steps thoroughly and honestly. That is why I've had a spiritual awakening. So that's acknowledged really clearly in the step. One, that we've had a spiritual awakening, and two, how we've had it. And understanding the wording of the steps, I think, Graham, does away with a lot of the flotsam and jetsam you sometimes hear about the steps. I have had a spiritual awakening, and I've had it as a result of these steps. Right?
Yeah.
And that is the message that I'm supposed to be carrying, which is what you alluded to a few minutes ago. Not this message or that message. The message I'm supposed to try to carry is the spiritual awakening that I have had personally as a result of these steps. Now, I don't go around berating what message other people carry or judging, but the fact is, you and I know, Graham, that you hear all kinds of things. But in the language of the steps, and I believe those people back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they knew that the spiritual experience was as a result of these steps. And that was the message they tried to carry. The solution is in the steps, in the literature. Our prime book that we use is a book called Alcoholics Anonymous, which we often call the Big Book. It's about £14 off eBay and Amazon. You can listen to or read it completely free 24/7 at aa.org. Arguably, I suppose, but the second book that we use is a book called The 12 Steps and the 12 Traditions, which is what I've got up on the screen right here, this book here. Now, that you can also buy about the same price. You can listen to or read anytime completely free at aa.org. You can also download a free Big Book app or a free 12 and 12 app from the Google Play Store. Now, the Big Book was written in the Big Book was written in the late 30s, the 12 and 12 in the 60s. And, I work out of the Big Book and I use the 12 and 12 as well. So I'd encourage anyone listening to this, to get themselves both those literature and get themselves along to a face-to-face CA meeting, and also to come along to a Zoom meeting. Graham and I attend a meeting called We Can Recover. It's a healthy group that's been going a couple of years now. It meets twice a day, every day, 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. And I will be putting up some meeting details shortly on the screen. But there's lots and lots of meetings. If you're in Britain and you want to know how to get to a CA face-to-face meeting, if you go to Cocaine Anonymous, one word, cocaineanonymous.org.uk, you'll get a list of in-person meetings, and you'll also get a list of online meetings. If you was to go to ca-online.org, you would get a list of meetings there as well. So please come along to a face-to-face and or a Zoom meeting. Don't ever be put off coming to a Zoom meeting. You do not need to put your camera on. Indeed, only about 20% of participants actually have their camera on during the meeting. So don't ever think you're shy of coming to a Zoom meeting because you'll have to put your camera on. Most people don't put the camera on. And indeed, you don't even need to talk. You can just come along and listen quietly. Conversely, if you'd like to share, you'd be very welcome to share. So, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts. So how do we carry this message to other addicts, alcoholics? Graham?
There's loads of ways to carry it, but obviously the main way is taking others through the 12 steps, because that is our solution. But, there's so many ways of working the 12th step, even just sharing in the meeting or doing a chair or, taking meetings to hospitals and institutions, like I mentioned earlier, places where people can't get to the meetings. We're quite lucky now. We got things like Zoom, which has made our fellowship, really huge. You can literally connect to anyone all over the world. It's just amazing what's on offer here, through this program. And it's like, step 12, like I mentioned, it's my favorite step. I try to never turn down the opportunity to be of service, whether it's a 12-step call, or I've done, service on, the CA helpline before. There's service on writing to prisoners. There's so many ways we can carry the message. Even just being in a meeting, clean and sober, is a message. It shows that if I keep coming back and doing what's suggested, I can stay clean and sober. And, that obsession to use will be removed. And that's been my experience. And, I come back to carry that message because, to show my gratitude, to, pass it on to the next person. Because if it wasn't passed on to me, I wouldn't be here right now. It's like if people done the 12 steps and then just went on with their daily lives, there'd be no one here for the newcomer.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
And, with that being the case, it's like, it's very important. It's like what sobriety has given me is obviously freedom from active addiction and alcoholism, a program to deal with life on life's terms, and, the ability to be happy, generally happy, to, put right my mistakes of the past, to make a amends. I've got a beautiful life today. I'm trusted with my family and my friends, and I've got my kids back in my life. And I find all the time I'm working these steps, especially step 12, it gets me out of self, because, we're all human. It's like, life shows up sometimes and we can go into self. But, I have a higher power of my own understanding I try and connect to,
Sorry, carry on.
Throughout the whole day, I try to stay connected.
Yes.
And just like listen, that like two-way prayer, I just close my eyes
Yeah.
and, ask, what he would have me be and do, and just listen for those answers.
Yeah. Can I chime back in there? So, so having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addict alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So trying to carry the message is like the third segment. We acknowledge we've had a spiritual awakening. We acknowledge how, as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to addicts, and to enlarge upon that, I think that's where a support group comes in. In my experience, the chaps that I've worked with and the women I've worked with in recent times have succeeded better if they've had a support network of, I would suggest, 5 or 6 folks. You don't need to pour out your heart to each of them, Graham. You don't need to know everything about every one of them. You don't necessarily have to agree with everything they say, but they're persons who you kind of connect with, and that you could ring them and they could ring you if they needed someone to talk to, particularly in early recovery. And to keep an eye on the support network. People get new relationships, new jobs, change fellowships, pick up again. Keep an eye on the support network. Build a support network, maintain a support network. And that is a great way to carry the message. So you might not be sponsoring them, they might not be sponsoring you, but you are supporting each other. You're part of each other's team. And now with the advent of text messages, WhatsApp, particularly WhatsApp audio clips, I find very useful. I'm not a big fan of text messages, I have to say, but audio clips is a nice middle road that you can do it, without necessarily having to phone somebody. And perhaps if they're busy or you're busy or you've just got something on your heart, you can just record a quick audio clip and it can change someone's day. So we tried to carry this message to addicts, and sharing in meetings, just showing up in meetings as you shared, sharing in meetings, doing service, opening the doors, public information, hospitals and institutions, fundraising, these kinds of ways to carry the message. And well, I suppose this is a bit like public information, isn't it? What we're doing here, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so we try to carry this message to addicts. And then the next thing is to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now, that's the tricky one, Graham. in all of our affairs. But again, Wilson had great wisdom. He said, we tried to carry this message to addicts, and we tried to practice these principles in all our affairs. And I think when it comes to principles, I've heard it said, if you look after the principles, the persons will look after themselves. So we get clean, we find a new way to live, we're helping others, we're better members of society. Life ain't perfect, but we do our best in the circumstances we're in, and we try. I like the language, Graham. We try to practice these principles, and a little bit of willingness in God's hands goes a long way. So it's a good day if we've been harmless, in the solution, clean, and helped others, I would say. What do you think?
Yes, definitely. It's all about, progress rather than perfection. It's like, I don't think we'll ever reach perfection, but, we aim for it, obviously. But, it's like I notice progress in myself and others all the time. It's like the ability to get out of self to help someone else is just beautiful. There's nothing worse than being stuck in your own head and your own problems, thinking I'm alone. It's like you don't have to be alone. It's like we got a beautiful fellowship with a beautiful solution. Today, that's what I've got in my life. And, every opportunity I get to carry the message, I do, because it's what saved my life. It's it's what's given me a life today. You know, it's I can enjoy life clean and sober. I can go anywhere as a free man. You know, it's and the temptation to drink or use isn't there because it's been lifted by carrying this message. You know, I try. You know, it's like when it comes to anonymity, you know, I don't mind about my own personal anonymity. That is, you know, my own choice. You know, I'm happy to go and tell the world, you know, it's, you know, but it's, I need to remember it's all about attraction rather than promotion. You know, when someone sees that I'm doing good, you know, and themselves are suffering, you know, that you know, there's attraction there. They come to me and say, you know, it's like how you managing to stay clean and sober. You've seemed to turn your life around. You seem happy. And, you know, I explain to them, you know, that I go to these meetings, I have a support network. I try to carry the message that there is a way out, there is a way to live and enjoy life without drinking drugs.
So what does this phrase mean? We tried to practice these principles in all our affairs. I suppose it means that every day, you know, good or bad, happy or sad, we try to be principled in our behaviour and speech. Why is that important for an addict, Graham?
Why is that important? It's like,
So what I had in mind is, you know, for people that have never had problems with addiction, of course, it's good and right and proper that they be moral and kind and be principled. But for persons that have just got clear of active addiction, it's particularly important, would you say, to try and practice these principles? And what is meant by these principles?
you know, to treat others how I want to be treated. You know, it's like I believe everyone deep down wants to be a good person, you know, a good member of society. And, I lack confidence in certain ways, but I'm always trying to improve, you know, and practice the opposite of my character defects, you know, and I believe God will remove the ones that I can't remove myself. You know, I just try to be a kind person, you know, be, be loving, be tolerant, be selfless, you know. There's so many.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, the principles in the first three steps are honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. You know, so I've got to remain honest, open-minded, and willing. When I'm wrong, I've got to admit it. And then my assets, my character assets. You know, that I am loving, kind, helpful, and thoughtful. You know, and to practice my assets and pray for God's power for the removal of shortcomings, and not to practice shortcomings. And I think it's really important, Graham, that I try to practice, you know, my character assets, because if I'm not, it's possible to work these steps backwards. That's the scary thing.
Definitely.
And I've seen it happen many times, you know. And this is sobriety. I mean, I like to have a laugh and joke like everyone else, but it's a really serious business. You know, it really is. You mentioned it earlier, Graham. I've sat with people in this very town, right, that are now long gone, strung themselves up, been shot, been stabbed, withered and died, preceded by months and years of mental turmoil, physical ill health, criminality, poverty, homelessness. You know, that's the reality of active addiction. But if you're listening to this podcast, you can get clean and stay clean and have a better future through the program of Cocaine Anonymous. My suggestions would be get yourself a big book on a 12 and 12. As I say, you can read or listen to them at aa.org completely free. Come along to some meetings, get yourself a sponsor and get on these steps. Listen to the rest of these podcasts. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. We'll try and get them answered for you. You know, the solution is in the steps of CA. And you know, I think why it's important that I try to practice these principles in all my affairs is if I'm not practicing these principles, then it's easily possible to get into my defects of character, to get back into the exact nature of wrongs. And then I'm back in step 4. I'm resentful, fearful. And Graham, if I'm resentful and fearful, I'm harmful. Sooner or later,
Yeah.
I'm harmful, right? That's the harsh reality. And that, when I work a step 4 now, I do it in that order: resentments, fears, and harms. Now, there's always a solution. There's always questions. Life's not perfect. We all have financial concerns, health concerns. You know, I've never met anyone that's not had at least some. I know we're idealists, right? You know, we're perfectionists. You know, but many of us still have regret of the past, fear of the future, anxiety in the present. And I think the idea is that if I'm trying to lead a principled life, and I think this is where nightly inventory comes into it. You know, check out our podcast on step 10, nightly inventory. Was I helpful or harmful to others today? Was I in the solution or in the problem today? Was I resentful today? Was I fearful? Did I do the will of God today? Did I help others today? And many other such questions. I think, Graham, is really helpful of an evening. What do you think?
Oh yes, definitely.
So I think that's where it says these principles. It's referring to all those principles of the previous 11 steps. And you know, it's been said that it's the mission. You know, is like step 12. You know, we've crossed that bridge to normal living. You know, we're free from addiction. You know, and I remember an addict who I worked with said to me, Graham, a few months ago, he said, "What do I do now? Now I've stopped using, now I'm clean." I said, "Well, that is the correct question. What are you going to do now?" You know, it's a very good question. It's a very, very salient question. And making good use of our time, keeping the body and the mind busy is really, really important. Graham?
Yep. Sorry. Yes. It's like, you know, I do at least one meeting a day, you know, because I want to connect to people that understand, and you know, I can help them. You know, it's a beautiful support network that we form in these fellowships. And you know, so I need that network of people. I need God in my life. I need a program. I need to carry this message, because that's what will keep me away from that temptation of the first drink or drug. And it's like, you know, the life I've got today, it's like, yeah, life still shows up. It's like, unfortunately, I'm very ill myself. I've got terminal brain cancer, but I'm still very positive. I still got a smile on my face because I'm clean and sober. I can enjoy precious time with my family and friends and loved ones. As addicts, we tear down relationships unintentionally. And, from carrying this message, working all these steps, I've managed to rebuild all the damage I've caused in the past. And I'm free. I'm free to enjoy my life, enjoy the little pleasures of life. I'm able to enjoy time with my kids, to be present, to have a laugh and joke with people, and live the lighter side of life and not be so serious. And I don't live in fear all the time like how I used to. I was always in fear of what people thought of me. I was scared of everything. I believe the root of our illness is self-centered fear.
Yeah.
And I'm free from that today, from carrying this message, because it helps me get out of self. It helps me appreciate my own life. It helps me appreciate the life of others. Because connection is the opposite to addiction.
Absolutely.
I really believe that. I really do believe that.
And that's exactly what I was about to say. Purpose, connection, expression, the next right thing, hobbies, interests, pastime. Good self-care. We learn about these things in the rooms, in the fellowship. I'm convinced, Graham, that the fellowship and the program are not the same thing. And you could say the meetings, in the real world, Graham, I know people that manage to stay clean just by attending meetings. And what you're going to say, more power to them. I know people that attend meetings frequently but don't work a program. But I know in my opinion, the happiest people in recovery are those that have a program of action. Surrender, acceptance, faith, admitting when they're wrong, having made all their amends, continuing to take personal inventory, packing a lot into the stream of life. In my experience, they're the happiest people in recovery. And it's been my experience that when blokes get clean, they've got to suit up and show up and get after life, and see to things, and find out what floats their boat. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Find out
definitely.
it's no good just sitting around. There's a chapter in our book, in Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book, Into Action. It's not called Into Thinking, and it's not called Into Feeling. It's not even called Into Talking. It's called Into Action. And the old saying is you show me your faith without works, if you can, and I will show you my faith by my works. In other words, by what I do, not necessarily what I say, by what I do. And of course, the great old British adage is, don't tell me, show me.
Definitely.
So we're coming towards the end of the podcast now. We've probably got another 5 minutes left. And, I'm really pleased that we've managed to do this series on the 12 steps. And I'm really pleased that the listeners have kept coming back and listening. And it's my hope that anyone that perhaps you're struggling with drugs, perhaps you're struggling today, perhaps you're tuning into this video on YouTube or Skype or WhatsApp or in the rooms.com and you're really struggling with drug addiction, you can quit. You can quit. you can have a happier life free from addiction. You know, my suggestion would be get yourself into 12-step recovery, get yourself a sponsor, get to meetings, tell people you're looking for a sponsor, ring the numbers, get connected, get into the literature, develop personal spirituality, try and get to face-to-face meetings, try and get to meetings regular and often, you know, find a program of action. In the meetings, Graham, I hear about the program of action, and I can learn about the program of action. But the meetings are not the program. The program is
No.
what I'm when I'm not sounding off in a meeting or on a podcast. The program is what I have or don't have then when I'm alone with God. That is the rub, you know. So in the meetings, I learn about the program, and I also meet the fellowship in the meetings, and ideally forge connections with a support group who are members of the fellowship who also have something of a program of action. And that's the power and identification of working the fellowship. What do you think?
Yes, there's so much power in what there is to offer here, and you know, lack of power was my dilemma. You know, I couldn't stay clean and stopped, you know, until I found this way of life. And it is a way of life. It's not a case of we finished the 12 steps. It's an ongoing thing. And, you know, I owe everything to this, everything. You know, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's nothing greater on earth than seeing people get free and stay free. I mean, I can't tell you what a thrill it is for me, these people that I, you know, for me, sponsorship's a very personal, private thing, Graham. I never divulge information that's entrusted to me. You know, you just wouldn't get it out to me because I don't even like people I'm working with telling people I work with them until they've completed all 12 steps. I think they say what they like, but you know, but I don't at that stage. It still stays with me, whatever we've shared in the process. But you know, seeing them doing well, becoming employable, becoming sane. I mean, I can remember talking to people completely unreasonable, difficult to talk with, could barely hold a sentence together. The health, you know, I remember one chap a few months ago, and he could barely walk, talk, or think. Graham, his wife had left him. He'd lost his job. His health had gone. His sanity had gone. His money had gone. His mind was starting to go. He's now got nearly a year completely clean and abstinence. You know, and his life's come back together. His wife's not come back, but his sanity and his health has, and his job is employable again. His job's come back, and he was in a really bad way, you know. And that is the power of this program, you know. And I'm sure you've heard of many similar situations.
Oh, definitely. You know, I've seen it. I've seen it. I've experienced it. You know, my life was completely transformed. I was a hopeless alcoholic addict. I couldn't stop for no one or anything, you know, no matter how hard I tried, until I came across this solution. You know, I tried anything and everything before then, and nothing worked for me apart from, you know, the 12 steps. It's given me the ability to get to know my true self, you know, the person that God intended me to be. You know, and I've got so much gratitude for this fellowship, you know, for this way of life. And, you know, that's why I keep coming back. I keep coming back. And it's like seeing other people recover is probably the most beautiful gift I've ever, you know, received. It's like seeing the lights come on in other people's eyes. It's just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what's on offer here is a completely new way of living, really, you know, and to see persons come into this program and into the rooms confused, beaten into a state of reasonableness, at their wits' end, unable to imagine a future clean and unable to imagine a future using, to see them get free and stay free and help others, well, it's one of the greatest things on earth.
Definitely.
You know, so we've got about another 2 minutes, Graham. This is quite a long chapter 12. There's another page, and then I'm going to put up the meetings list, you know, and it's been an epic series on the 12 steps. We'll very likely be doing a part 2 on each of the steps, and hopefully, Graham, you'll come back and join us when we do. We're going to do general discussions as well on different topics about recovery and abstinence. And, you know, I'm really hoping that you'll come and join us on those. So is there anything in summary that you'd like to share with our listeners today? You know, take a couple of minutes to share whatever you like, recovery, the program in general.
It's like, you know, addiction kills thousands of people a year. And, you know, there is a way out. You know, we don't have to suffer in silence. You know, we all think, oh, I'm the only one that behaves like this. I'm the only one that thinks like this. It's not the case. You know, there is a way out of active addiction. You know, it's like I never thought it would be possible, but I found that way out. And, you know, the life I've got today is a complete transformation. You know, there's so much on offer in this program, in this way of life. You know, it's like anyone that is, you know, struggling, you know, if they think they might have a problem or they know they've got a problem, you know, attend our fellowship. You know, listen, you know, do what's suggested. You know, you will build a whole new life. You know, a life of peace and serenity. I think I'll leave it there.
Yeah, that's fine. And I would say as well that if you've listened to this series, you know, and you're wondering about sponsorship and you're deciding whether to take the plunge, this can work for you, whether you're addicted to heroin, crack, cocaine, alcohol, speed, meth, whatever, pills. You can quit and stay quit through this process. You absolutely can. You know, I've known countless persons who didn't think it would work for them, but it has. So please come along to a meeting and listen and get connected and get yourself some literature. I'm going to go ahead, Graham, and put up on the screen the meetings list in just a moment. Can I ask you, Graham, what sort of time frame did you go through the 12 steps in, and what sort of time frame do you think is suitable? I hear a lot of talk about this.
It's like the first time I went through the steps, I'd done like one chapter a week. You know, I suppose it was roughly over a 4 to 6 month period. Yeah, and it's like there's so many different like opinions on how fast you should go through the program, and I think it's different for everyone. You know, some people, you know, I personally believe get through it fast and then go through it again slower, you know, to take it more, you know, in depth, you know, because, you know, we're dealing with a terminal illness, really, addiction. It's like we need that solution fast.
Absolutely. So up on the screen there, family, I've got a list of some of the meetings. There are hundreds and hundreds every week, and you're welcome at them all. Me and Graham regularly are found at that one in the pinky purple. We can recover Ask-It Basket twice a day, every day, 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. There's no passcode, there's just that meeting ID. So download the free Zoom app, pop in the ID just before 2 or 8, or indeed around that time, and you'd be very, very welcome there. There's lots and lots of the meetings. Reaching Out is on at the top right, is on every night of the week at 11 p.m. Underneath that, Daily Reprieve every night of the week, 9:30. So there's lots and lots of meetings, family. So yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Graham. That has been epic.
It's been a pleasure to be of service.
It really has been great. And yeah, any questions, put them in the comments below. We'll try and get them answered. And although this is step 12, the steps are an ongoing process, and so are our little videos. I'll be back with another podcast in the near future. And again, you know, anyone listening, I'm not a spokesperson for CA, I'm just a member. And, you know, any person would have all different views on the things we've discussed, you know, so we'll be back with another one at some point to discuss this. And if anyone wants to add anything, please feel free to put it in the comments, of course. So without further ado, Graham, once again, thank you so much. Your experience has been epic to listen to, and that's been really great.
Thank you for asking me.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, family, bye for now. Bye-bye.